Knitters, welcome to episode 91 of the Knitty McPurly podcast. I am Devin AT. You can find me on Instagram as Knitty McPurly. You can find all of my shop at KnittyMcPurly.com, knitting patterns, knitting accessories, stitch marker necklaces, all that at KnittyMcPurly.com. And if you want to email me, I am Devin at KnittyMcPurly.com. If you are not subscribed to my YouTube channel, please hit the subscribe. If you love this podcast and you love knitting podcasts everywhere, hit the thumbs up. If you hate this podcast, hit the thumbs up anyway. Thank you so much for joining me, you guys. It is a very cold, rainy August day, which is kind of weird, but it's Sunday. Happy Sunday. This has been the weirdest day. This morning, I'm awakened by my husband going, looks like we missed the 6:30 mass. And I look at the clock and it's 5:55. And I was like, we can do it. So all of us got in the car within 8 minutes. We were in the car by 6:03 and we made it to mass. So the whole day's been kind of like that. It's been kind of weird. It's cold and rainy in August, which is super weird. Are the leaves changing? I think the leaves are changing. My husband is the one. He keeps pointing them out. He's like, look, that one's yellow, that one's red. Look, like it's not possible. It's too early. We'll see. I don't know. Have you pre-ordered your advent calendar yet? If you haven't, please look out for Future You and go pre-order an advent calendar. I have some left, not a lot. We're coming down to the wire. Do not have a million left, but you can still get yours. So KnittyMcPurly.com, go pre-order your advent calendar, and I'm gonna talk about that more in a few minutes. So my older kids go back to school this week. My younger kids went back to school 2 weeks ago, homeschoolers. But yeah, it's fall for me. Anyway, I'm wearing a sweater indoors. The fan is off. I feel like it's officially fall. My knitting mojo is like cranking, super wanting to knit all the time. How about you? Do you feel like you want to knit all the time, or are you still more like, lemonade by the pool? Lemonade by the pool, pumpkin latte with your knitting. I don't know. Oh, that reminds me, I didn't get any tea. Anyway, so good to see you guys. So good to be back here. I love podcast day. It's so much fun. Okay, progress and shop news. I was originally going to have a shop update a week from yesterday, and that is too soon. I was going to do it on the 27th, but I'm not going to be able to swing that. So I pushed it out to Saturday, September 3rd. That's 2 weeks. This shop update is going to have a ton of great things in it. A lot of accessories for fall will be updated. There will be a lot of yarn. I didn't know if I could make that happen, but I think I'm going to be able to with that extra week. So that's super exciting. If you're not signed up for my newsletter, go over to my website and sign up for my newsletter, and you can get all the info on that shop update along with everything else. I don't send out newsletters too often. At the most once a week, sometimes a little less, maybe sometimes a little bit more, but usually once a week-ish on average. Yeah, another thing is advent calendars. The rates go up. I talked about this last week a little bit. The postal service rates go up October 2nd. I just had another thought. I just thought about maybe sending them all UPS. I think that's what I'm gonna do. This is like a real-time podcast where I get ideas in real time. I was just thinking about how last year for both the Advent and Lent calendars, or last year for Advent, this year for Lent, I sent them almost all UPS. So if I'm gonna send them UPS, it doesn't matter when I mail them. So probably still end of October is what I'm thinking if you pre-ordered. After that, I will just have them up to be bought, and I'll ship them out as soon as you order them after the whole big group of them goes out. Yeah, I'll probably end up sending it UPS. I'm glad we talked about this. That really helped me. Here you thought you were just sitting here knitting and drinking your tea. Actually, you were helping me in my thought process. Extroverts, this is how we think. We think by talking, right? Okay, in case you didn't follow that and you're like, what is Devin talking about? I was thinking about sending out my advent calendars early like the very, very beginning of October, which is kind of crazy early. I wanted to beat the holiday rush, but that's kind of like beating the Halloween rush. But I was thinking about the USPS rates going up on October 2nd, I think, is when they go up. So, but with more thought, I'll just send them UPS and I won't worry about it. That's the plan. Okay. Yeah, I feel like my advent calendar is a really good price point. It's $125. I noticed when I first started selling advent calendars, I did kind of a survey of what other dyers were charging for advent calendars, and I wanted to know what they were including. And I found that most advent calendars were in the $200-ish range, but they included a lot of extra stuff, tea bags and chocolate and blankets and things that I did not want as a knitter. Like, if I'm thinking about buying an advent calendar, what do I want? I just want the yarn. I don't want to pay extra money for stuff that I don't really want. So that was my thinking there. Another way that I tried to one-up my competitors, also by having a lower price point and focusing just on the things that people wanted. Another way I tried to one-up people was by including a pattern. All of my calendars, whether it is an advent calendar or a Lent calendar, come with a knitting pattern, a mystery knit along. And this one is no different. I've had some people ask me, like, can we see a picture of the advent calendar? That is not the way this works. It is a surprise, but I do give you details about, the gist of what it is. For example, in the past, I have done fingering weight mini skeins with a shawl pattern. This advent calendar is going to be DK weight mini skeins, and the patterns that accompany it for the mystery knit along are winter accessories, and there will be more than one. So these are very giftable things, also very keepable. So, depending on what you want to do there. But it's nice to have giftable items that you're knitting in December because, December. And if your family is anything like mine, I find that I have as many December birthdays as I have Christmas presents to buy. Like, there are so many December birthdays. In our household, we have 2 December birthdays. So it's always nice to have extra gifts in December. The theme is stripes and brights. It's not so much speckles and multicolored skeins. It's more semi-solids and tonals that will be creating stripes in our projects. And the brights are, think of what you're used to seeing from Knitty McPurly. Kind of classic or contemporary colors, not like highlighter brights, not like that. So, that's basically what that is if you are interested in that. I've not had a lot of knitting time in the past week, mainly because I've been working on the shop update and all the behind the scenes stuff that's super boring and I can't talk about. But I did have a few breakthroughs on this sweater that I have been showing you, that I have been working on. It just gets slightly bigger every time. I've got a little binder clip on the back there. That's to mark the back neck. I got a lot of great suggestions. You remember last time when I was talking about the bats and I showed the picture of the man-sized bat? Some good Samaritan out there left me a comment saying, don't worry, that picture is a fake. Like, this bat from the Philippines, I forget what it's called, but that bat from the Philippines that's shown in that picture that I showed last time, that's the same size as the man, they can grow up to 3 or 4 pounds. That picture has been jacked with to make it look scarier than it actually is. I was like, thank God, thank God, human-sized bats do not exist. Oh my gosh. Like, think about that thing that you hate the most, whether it's snakes or spiders. A lot of people kind of feel that way about snakes and spiders. That's how I feel about bats. Along those lines, I got a lot of great suggestions as a name for this sweater, but my favorite one came from Neil of United Kingdom. He suggested Vesper. And there is I think where he got it, and correct me, Neil, if I'm wrong, but I think that it's a variety of bat called the Vesper bat. And Vesper means evening. Because I was thinking like Vespers is evening prayer. So I loved it. I was like, that's perfect. Somebody else suggested the bougie sweater, which I thought was also awesome. I got tons of really great suggestions. Those are just two of my favorites. But I'm gonna go with Vesper for this sweater. Oh, I just love it so much. I cannot wait for it to be done. You know, in design, you come up against decisions that you have to make. And you have to kind of extrapolate in your mind what will happen if you do X. You know, I'm kind of at a crossroads when it comes to the body stitch count and the arm stitch count, because I don't want there to be a break. I don't want it to be like a dolman sleeve, which is just a dropped sleeve like that. I want it to be a full-on batwing so that this connects to the waist. It's a straight line there. Somebody asked me a good question about the batwing sleeve, if that's the same as the dolman sleeve, and I'm gonna talk about sleeves next week. Last week we did the Bridgerton effect. This week we're gonna talk about the mattress stitch. Next week, we're gonna talk about sleeves because there are so many interesting sleeves out there, historically in fashion and in knitwear design. But anyway, coming back to my crossroads, my why in the road is trying to decide how to do the body stitch count. Because if I start with the neck stitch count and I do the raglan shaping all the way down to the bottom, the body will continue to expand like a trapezoid. Also, with necklines, you don't have that much variation in the size. A lot of times on a sweater pattern, when you're going from, what I do is I go from the 30-inch bust to the 60-inch bust. That's the span. And I typically do 8 sizes over those 30 inches. The neck size is not that different between the 30-inch and the 60-inch because shoulders are only so big. You know, bodies tend to get bigger in the middle. So if I'm starting with a certain number of stitches at the neckline and I am increasing without changing all the way to the bottom, that's one size. So I thought, well, what if I only, at about this point, because I put the stitches on a piece of yarn and I put it over my head just to see. We're kind of at a point where the body stitches are where I like them. The sleeve stitches need to keep increasing. But I feel like if I stop increasing on the body and only increase on the sleeves, I will end up with a point. And that point will stick out. It won't lay flat like I want it to. So I'm trying to decide how to craft this sweater so that I can get, I don't have to have 8 sizes. Not every sweater has 8 sizes. For example, the Everywhere sweater that I am currently wearing with my jammies because it is cold outside, which means it's full on jammy time. This sweater ended up, it's at the tech editor right now. My tech editor just got over COVID, or she's just getting over it right now. She lives in Colorado, but she, once she's better, she will look at this pattern and then it will go to the test knitters. So this is on its way. But this sweater, because of the way that it is, I only ended up doing 6 sizes. You'll notice that the sleeve goes from here to here. The sleeve measurement is much larger than, and the front is tiny, and then it increases to the V, and that's the point at which you just knit straight down other than the pockets. So this has a shape that did not require 8 sizes. I just ended up doing 6. And also because it is this ribbed pattern, it's just very stretchy. So you have to kind of think, do I want it to be more fitted or do I want it to be more loose? So like I said, I don't need to have 8 sizes, but I do need to have sizes that will fit that span of a 30-inch bust to a 60-inch bust, because that is where most people are. You do have people that are smaller than that, and you do have people that are larger than that. But for the most part, 98% of the knitters are going to fall into that span. So even if I had like a small, medium, and large, which is a possibility, even that's not a very big span. I'd probably need to have at least 5 sizes for it to be, a legit sweater pattern. But I'm just not sure. I'm not exactly sure where it's going to go from here and how it's going to go. But I do want to tell you that I absolutely love it. And when I hold it up here and see it, I just think it's so great. My husband and the kids and I have had a couple movie nights the past couple nights, and I've just been sitting there just knitting away at this during the movie night. So that's been really fun. I haven't made any progress on my Everywhere Sweater Light, which is this exact sweater in a fingering weight held double with mohair. So another fun fact about this sweater is that this is a bulky weight yarn held double with mohair, and I tried super bulky to see if I could get a similar gauge, and I did not. Super bulky is not the same as a bulky held double with mohair. It's a different thing. I also kind of feel, and I could be wrong about this, but I feel like super bulky and chunky and what do they call that really huge yarn? I don't know what that's called. The one that Gigi's using on that sweater she was working on, that just gigantic yarn. I feel like there's a couple of words there that are not applied in a universal way. Like one company's super bulky might be another company's chunky or ultra chunky or super ultra double chunky or whatever it is. But I just feel like those words are not interchangeable. So when it comes to Knitty McPurly yarn, my St. Petersburg super bulky does not equal my Berlin bulky plus Munich mohair. Oh, it's just so European. But, another companies may. So I don't know. Okay, word of the week. We're going to do word of the week and topic of the week as one thing. And today we are going to be talking about the mattress stitch. The mattress stitch is a stitch in knitting where you join together 2 pieces of knitting using a vertical seam. So if these are the rows of knitting right here, you join them up and you do a seam like that. And I'm going to be doing a tutorial after this to show you just very quick, and just as a reminder that that's what it is, in case you want to use that stitch for any reason. Usually this stitch is used to join up a front and a back on a sweater, like down below the underarm, or to sew a sleeve that has been knit flat. A lot of times the mattress stitch is used to sew up the seams on a sweater. I tried to do a really deep dive on the mattress stitch. I really tried. I found that there is also a stitch used among surgeons called the mattress stitch, which feels weird because you don't want to think about surgeons using a stitch called the mattress stitch. Like it just sounds like something that you use to sew up mattresses, right? But there is a vertical mattress stitch and a horizontal mattress stitch used by surgeons. Are there any surgeons that watch this knitting podcast, or any nurses out there, or anyone who sutures? Because you might know about this stitch. One thing I learned is, like I said, there's the 2 kinds, the horizontal and the vertical. The interesting thing about them is that they are separate sutures. So once you do a stitch, you tie it off, and then it's a totally separate thing to do the next stitch. I actually learned quite a bit about suturing when I was reading up about this. There are different ways to do it. Like I just assumed you were just sewing it closed, but there are so many different ways to do it, like in terms of what level of skin you use, whether it's the upper level or the lower level. Super interesting. But the vertical mattress stitch is also called the Donati stitch after Italian surgeon Mario Donati, who I guess came up with it. The horizontal mattress stitch is used for more fragile skin. I found pictures, but I thought it's not really fair to insert medical pictures into a knitting podcast without fair warning. So you can look them up if you want, but I won't bother you with those pictures. So I wanted to know, why is it called the mattress stitch? What is the origin of the mattress stitch? Whether we're talking about the knitting seam or the surgical seam, why is it called that? I could not find it. I think I spent an hour trying to find why it's called the mattress stitch. Like 700 years ago in Holland, did they use it to make mattresses, or was it invented by a guy named Mattress, or what? Why? Could not find it. Does anyone know? Does anyone know why it's called the mattress stitch? Do you have a book that might tell us why it's called the mattress stitch? If so, send me an email and tell me, or direct me to the name of that book or website, because I could not find it. I tried. Okay. So in knitting, this is also called the ladder stitch, which I'm going to be showing you in the tutorial in just a minute. But basically you're sewing together two pieces vertically in a way that is invisible, it's really pretty cool actually. When you're doing it, you want to have two pieces of knitting that have the same number of stitches. Typically it's shown on stockinette, but you can use it with any knitted fabric. Like I'm going to put up a picture here from an Interweave Knits article where they show it on both ribbing and seed stitch. Okay, folks, today we're going to be using the mattress stitch to sew up a seam with these two swatches. These are both done in super bulky, and they are stockinette stitch. And we're going to be joining up this seam right here. And you can think of like an underarm seam or a side seam on a sweater, possibly a shoulder seam, a time when you would want two pieces of stockinette to be sewn together vertically. So I have here a nice big fat yarn needle with a contrasting color of yarn on it. We're going to be using contrasting yarn just so you can see. So basically what I'm going to do here is I'm going to find this I've got this outer line of stitches here, and I'm going to find these bars right there. See those? Those are what I'm going to be using to seam together these two swatches. So just to get the yarn in there, I'm going to go into the cast on right there. All right. And then I'm going to do the same over here where I have my stitches on the edge. And then those bars right there, when I spread it apart, those are what I'm going to be using. So I'm going to go in on the cast on edge once more, just to get the yarn going in there. All right, so I'm going to start on this side. It doesn't really matter which side you start on, probably just the opposite of the one, just the one that you started with first. Okay, so I'm just going to go under that first bar right there. All right. I've got kind of a long piece. I probably didn't need it to be this long. And then I'm going to come over here and do the same thing. Where is it? With that first bar, like that. Now, I am definitely not an expert in this. I have done it a couple of times. Something I've done a lot more of, and you can find on my website, is how to stitch pockets to sweaters, because I do that a lot. This I don't use quite as much, but it is extremely satisfying, as you're going to see here in a minute. So you can see these nice big fat stitches in the contrast color that we're going to be getting rid of and hiding here in just a minute. That part is really fun. All right, so let me show you that. Okay, so here you see what we have there. Okay, now I'm just going to pull on those, and they are going to disappear. And that is super, super
satisfying. Now, it does look a little bit wonky there. Yeah, it's not though. There we go. They kind of pull up and they match up. So if I were going to then weave in my ends, I would do so to make these look nice and together. But you can see that contrast color, pull that down a little bit, that contrast color is just gone. Isn't that so fun? So that is the mattress stitch. I recommend that you try it just for fun, you know, because it's so satisfying to zip that up and have it all disappear. So you can see why it's important that you have the same number of stitches, because, you know, they kind of match up in the end.
I hope that little refresher was helpful. I think it's a really fun stitch. I think seaming is something that we don't use very much anymore. However, I, in a lot of my patterns, have pockets that we stitch down, and just knowing that those ladders are there and that they're kind of a hidden way to place your seaming stitches, that's really helpful. So, you know, you can kind of use that information in whatever way is most helpful to you. Okay, knitting fantasies. Today, I want to talk about an Etsy shop that I have mentioned before. I have used this Etsy shop before on the Knitting Fantasies segment, and the name of it is called Darling J'adore. And as I'm talking, I'm just going to be putting up pictures from this Etsy shop. She has so many cool patterns. I didn't choose any specifically, but they're all amazing. She has patterns for sweaters and stuffed animals and camisoles and hair accessories, baby teethers, just so many cute things. Her pictures are also beautiful. They all go together, like they're all either white or gray or kind of a dark yellow and orange, and just really, really pretty patterns. I'm gonna put on a little music and just play through some of these pictures. So if you are looking for any really kind of classic basic knitting patterns, I highly recommend this site on Etsy. She, I think, is French, not 100% sure about that, but I'm pretty sure that all of her patterns are available in both French and English, which is really nice. So I've not knit any of them myself, but they all look beautiful. And if I had all the time in the world, I would just go through and pick them off one at a time. And I would knit them all in those white and gray and neutral colors, and it would be so pretty. Okay, so here's what happened. I love this story. This story it's better than being spotted on the street. Let me tell you this story. This is from a lovely podcast watcher named Michelle. And Michelle says, several weeks back, I was at Mass at our parish on Corpus Christi Sunday, and there was a First Holy Communion family with out-of-town guests sitting in the pews in front of us. One of the ladies was a near occasion of sin for me, as she was wearing a gorgeous shawl that I could not stop looking at. The shawl was making it difficult for me to pay attention at Mass. Ha ha. Thankfully, it got a little warm, so she took it off for the end of Mass. When Mass was over, I went over and complimented her on her shawl. I asked her what pattern it was, and she started saying it was a Lenten, and I said, Knitty McPurly? It was your Lenten shawl. I'm still kicking myself for missing out on that one. Let me know if you have a kit lying around that doesn't belong to anyone. Oh my gosh, Michelle, that is as a knitwear designer, having your knitting be out in the wild and someone say, I love that, who's a knitter, and them say, your shawl. This is a Devin shawl. I know Devin. Oh my gosh. That is the best story ever. And poor Michelle missed out on the Lent calendar. And I don't know if there will be a Lent calendar next year, you guys. I love with the Advent calendar to keep it simple because it is before Christmas and we need simple knitting. But for the Advent calendar, it is a bigger calendar and it's a more intricate project because it's Lent. So because of the retreat this year, I just don't know that I'm going, and it depends when Lent starts. If Lent is especially late this year, if Ash Wednesday is especially late this year, I might be able to get it in. We'll see. I don't know. But anyway, it was a great story. Please tell me if you see a Knitty McPurly pattern in the wild. Please tell me. It fills me with joy. I was just reading today about celebrities who knit, and apparently Julia Roberts is a longtime knitter. And I'm like, how can I send Julia Roberts some yarn? Like, I feel like she needs some Knitty McPurly yarn, don't you think? How can we make this happen? Does anybody know Julia? We can do this, right? So anyway, thank you so much for joining me. So much fun as always. Join me next week where we're going to talk about all the different kinds of sleeves out there and how we can knit them. All right. See you next week, you guys. Bye.